soon as something doesn't work, man, she's all mad.
Oh, well, it's such a huge part of my day.
Oh, everybody, right? That's what I keep explaining. We all go through this. Technical problems happen to everybody, but man, sometimes it can just throw a wrench in your whole day.
Well, how about we're a day late because Friday the 13th, my equipment wasn't working yesterday.
It took a bite. Friday the 13th.
It really did.
I was hearing that music that,
Well, a trip to Micro Center later. Thank God it was only my cord. And by the way, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over, everyone. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison. Okay, so how is it that a cord can just suddenly go bad?
Well, because of where I live, who I live with, I have to put everything away after every podcast. So I have to wind that cord up every time and unwind it. So in my opinion, the inside, those tiny little wires on the inside, something must have fragmented. It's going to happen. So anyways, I bring that up to you because sooner or later that's going to happen to yours. And so I got this cord. This cord was $20, but it's really thick. This trying to show you, but nobody else cares. Nobody else cares but you and I. So
I hear you. But still, it's one of those things that happen. We deal with technology every day, even more so today because we're doing business remote. And when one of these little things go wrong, man, it impacts your entire day.
Well, it's what I do. I mean, I'm always working on websites, people's online presence, things like that. And when tech gets in the way, I lose a day or more. I could lose a week, depending on.
Crazy.
And I can't bill for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, something goes wrong with my laptop at work. I'm shut down from all of my systems. I can't. I'm dead in the water. There's nothing I can do except for try to work through support.
Yeah.
And that can take hours of just click here, click there, try this, try that.
And there's a communication gap there. That's frustrating too. I wanted to ask you, are you superstitious? So we're talking about Friday the 13th. Everything went wrong. You're not?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not superstitious.
Okay. I don't know.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun though, like thinking about it. But yeah, like for instance, Friday the 13th means nothing to me. It's just fun to mess with people that it does mess with,
Well, once again, look at the coincidence. The first time that we really had a tech glitch that took us off the air for a day was Friday the 13th.
Well, it was funny because yesterday morning I wake up. The first thing I think about is, it's Friday the 13th. And then I come out. The first thing I see you, man, you're all bent out of shape. I've never seen you like that before a show starts. You were all sweating. Your head was all red. You're still a little red over there.
It comes off my shirt. Yeah, I probably am because I was just been out. We were trying to get our stuff.
We were still jacking around with the whole thing.
Right. Hey, I wanted to tell you though about last weekend. I had such a good weekend. The weather was so beautiful.
Yeah, those are great. November, late,
October,
right before the fall really kicks in, and you got that Indian summer kind of thing going on. It's delightful.
So beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. So we went to Patterson's Fruit Farm again because we didn't know.
Place.
We didn't know what else to do. It's kind of funny. We were all morning like, we got to do something. It's so beautiful. Oh, it was like the most beautiful day of the year, the entire year. And so we go to Patterson's Fruit Farm. We're walking around, and I said, you know what? Just make this a little bit better. A glass of red wine. And so it's like, we kind of smacked ourselves in the head. Why didn't we think to go out to all the beautiful wineries out here in like Geauga County and stuff like that?
Yeah, there's all kinds of great stuff.
Yeah, they're so beautiful. We didn't think about it. And by the time, our days are so short that we couldn't say, okay, let's jump in the car and go for an hour drive.
Yeah.
By the time we would have gotten there, we would have missed the best part of the day by far. So, but we had a beautiful weekend. What I really want to tell you about is on Sunday, I had my first volunteer gig at the Shaker Lakes Nature Center.
Oh, how did that go?
So fun. And
Was it?
again, it was a beautiful day. It was about 77 and all
perfect.
sunny. And my job was to put 40-pound and 20-pound bags of bird seeds in people's trunks of the car. Apparently, they pre-order online. That's what I did from 11 to 3:30 in the afternoon. And the realization that I had very quickly was two things. The volunteer environment and a nature center environment weeds out all the undesirables. You are left with just spectacular people all day long.
Oh, man, that sounds outstanding.
And a lot of dogs.
Oh, perfect for you.
I got to pet a lot of dogs. I had so much fun. So that was a really positive first impression.
Good for you.
And we discussed my being a trail guide or ambassador. They call it trail ambassador.
Trail ambassador. That sounds like the job for you.
Yeah, it does. So it was a lot of fun. Did you do anything good last week?
It's funny. I'm trying to remember what we did.
It seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, it does. Boy, we did something.
I wanted to tell you. So on Monday, still equally beautiful, I took half the day off and did the ride on the towpath with my buddies Dan and Irby.
Oh, that's great. Tell me, what's the leaf situation on there? We don't get a fall over here. We don't get the changes, but the towpath trail this time of year. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. The leaves still colorful out there.
We were talking like if it would have been 2 weeks prior, it would have been perfect because all the leaves would have been on the trees, but the weather was bad 2 weeks ago. So no, it was unbelievably beautiful, but it wasn't like a lot of the trees were pretty bare. But it's also beautiful when they're on the ground though.
And it smells really good too.
Yeah, you're right. So we got 40 miles in. That was really
nice. Well, that's a nice ride.
It is.
Where did you ride, like up through Peninsula and that kind of thing? I love it over there.
Yeah, so we started off around close to Steelyard Commons, which is close to Tremont, which is very
you really got out there, boy.
Yeah, because we seem to not remember the fact that from Rockside Road to the Winking Lizard and Peninsula is 15 miles.
Yeah.
So that's a 30-mile ride right there.
And you went beyond there.
Easily another. I conservatively called it a 40-mile ride.
Did you make it to Hale Farm?
Is that the white buildings?
Yeah.
We go past that into
to
Winking Lizard. Sure, it's a heck of a ride.
Yeah, that and beautiful. Boy, that must have been just great. Now, Irby is the guy that had some serious problems over the summertime, right? How's he doing?
He's had a heck of a 2020, haven't we all? He's doing good. He lost his son in June.
Right.
That was absolutely horrifying while he was dealing with some serious health problems, looking at a triple bypass, which he dodged by a second opinion in doing some medication that makes it challenging for him to ride with us. So he didn't make it the full length of it, but understandably, but the fact that he made it, a good distance was very encouraging in and of itself.
I know that's a big deal right there. So did you guys just leave him behind?
I actually gave him the keys to my car. It was his decision. We were like, what do we do here? It worked out well. We all had a great time. And boy, I wanted to tell you though, just the other day, I got news that my aunt and uncle got COVID. They have COVID.
You know what? That is, how are they doing? What's the deal?
They're fine. Yeah. And this is the thing. I was so upset about hearing this. Lisa told me, actually, she was texting with my uncle because I forgot to tell you, tomorrow at this time, we'll be halfway to Nashville. Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. Well, frankly, I forgot because it was circumstantial. It was dependent on the weather. We kind of we're talking, and then we looked at the weather the other day, and Lisa's like, it's only supposed to be high 50s, low 60s, but sunny for these 3 days. We're going through Wednesday, so let's do it. And I'm like, cool, okay, looking forward to that. But back to my aunt and uncle. So They're both 75. They're like a young, attractive 75. They're like everything I want to be at 75. But my uncle just got done with 3 back surgeries for this condition that some big, long medical term that I don't recall. And my aunt also earlier this year, 2020, is diagnosed and treated, had surgery for lung cancer. She'd never smoked a day in her life. And had 1/3 of her lung removed. So she's been recovering from that. So needless to say,
she's definitely high risk.
That is my point.
Yeah.
And so he's a week ago, exactly a week ago, she had all the symptoms of a bad cold.
Well, this sounds horrifying.
She had all the symptoms of a bad cold. On Monday, got the COVID test, like Tuesday, Wednesday, yes, diagnosed with COVID, and my uncle just assumes he has COVID because she's been taking care of him, recovering from these surgeries. He's had headaches. That's been his symptoms. And hers were bad cold, but has pretty much subsided. So Wednesday night, I called my Uncle Jim. I'm like so concerned. I'm thinking horrible thoughts. He sounds absolutely normal, as good as ever. He's like, look, all I got is a headache. My Aunt Char, she's already pretty much over most of her cold symptoms. And they said the worst thing that they're facing is 14 days of being cooped up. Quarantine.
Oh, wow. As bad as that is, it's nothing compared to what we've heard could happen with people that are in that older state and also have comorbidities. This is the wow, they dodged a bullet is what it sounds like.
They did. And once again, about once a week, I look at the charts, or once every 2 weeks, I look at the charts on COVID. And the cases, as we hear every day, the cases have skyrocketed. The chart is just like this. And, but you go to deaths, and it's pretty much, if you draw an average,
it's a flat line.
It's a flat line. Yeah. So it would lead you, as common sense would lead you to believe that the effectiveness of COVID is wearing down, or how do you say that? The severity of it? I don't know. I don't want to pretend to be a doctor, and I don't want to lead anybody into false pretenses coming into Thanksgiving. Be careful. I don't want to give my mom COVID. So I'm maintaining extra caution, but at the same time, as we're talking about possibly going into another major shutdown, which would be absolutely devastating to our economy, I think we've got to keep our heads about us here.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it is crazy what's going on right now with Thanksgiving coming up and all of this talk about new cases and cases spiking and things like that.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, we found out that the governor here in California and Washington and also in Oregon put out travel advisories saying that local people should stay local, not to travel outside of your local area. They say now they're really focusing. I talked about some of the laws or some of the rules that we have in California that they're already put in place last week, but now they're saying really you should just stay with your local family for Thanksgiving. And if anybody travels here, they have to quarantine for 14 days. And that's all 3 states. Yeah. So, they're taking this really seriously, and it just seems, I don't know, just the whole thing correlating with Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's like the Grinch who stole Christmas right now. I mean, This is really, what a bummer.
It is, but maybe we're on the last leg of it.
I keep thinking that.
I know. Me too. We've been thinking that for about 6 to 8 months now.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. They predicted it right. They said that we were going to get a major spike in the fall.
Well, and this is what happens, with the flu. This is the time where people start getting sick. Why is it that they start getting sick at this time? Well, it's because the weather's changing. People aren't outside as much. They're more in close contact with each other in close quarters, and this is how things like this spread. So,
I'll say this, Merle. The death toll that I heard was 250,000. Yeah, and you'll hear various reports. I've looked it up before about the average U.S. death rate for common flu, and somewhere around 40,000 or whatever. So if they're saying 250,000 for COVID, and we know that if you have a trace of COVID in your bloodstream but die of a heart attack, they're going to say that you died of COVID. So there is that. I just think it seems like if we want to really define this, that it's a very highly contagious, severe flu.
Yeah, it's
But it's not the 98% of us shouldn't be fearful of dying from it.
well, let's face it. I mean, people that have comorbidities that are elderly, getting the flu is scary. I mean, I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm just saying that there's a chance you could pass away from that.
Yeah.
Just like pneumonia. These are things that are out there. I don't know that this is more deadly than that because this has become so politicized. Like you just said, the way that they're counting the COVID deaths out there, it's hard to know what to believe.
Okay, so I want to talk about this politicization a little bit because what I was just wondering, I did this design just the other day. For a client, I sell these personalized plates, like dinner plates. We put this artwork on them. I create the artwork, and then people can put their name on it and stuff. It's for kids mostly and babies, so it's fun. I like doing the designs, and I created this design that was like a stamp. And it looks like my client wanted something that looks like a special delivery stamp. So they could put their name, the baby's weight, birth date, all this stuff on. And I was creating it. And of course, if you're talking about this kind, it tends to have this very United States of America look to it, a flag type look. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, I got to be careful here. Because of politicization, there has been a very anti-American sentiment for a while.
Yes.
And like a flag offends people. This irritates me to no end.
Me too.
And so I'm being cautious so I made it very retro looking. I'm thinking maybe that will take away. I don't want it to make it. I think if it looks like a brand new flag, people go, Trump. Oh my God, it's Trump. I really think that. And so I made it look very retro. And I wanted to ask you, so now that it seems that Trump will not be president and it will be Biden, assuming you can, weigh in on that however you like. But if that is the case, do you think this anti-American sentiment will ease, will change? I mean, the Trump thing, what I'm asking is your opinion on the attitude that people just it exaggerated so much with the Trump hate. What do you think?
I've been saying this for a long time. Great question, by the way. I love the question. I personally don't think that it was Trump per se the last 4 years that's been going on.
It was going on before Trump.
Yeah, well, it was. And here's the thing that I look at is when Trump was the Apprentice, the host of The Apprentice, I never heard people talking about, oh, what a bigot that guy is.
Right.
I never heard people saying, even the fact we knew that he had a history with women. We everybody knew that. It was in the tabloids all the time. So there was nothing to hide there.
Millionaire playboy.
Nobody. And look, you have pictures of him with Al Sharpton, with Jesse Jackson, with Hillary Clinton, smiling. All these people were friends of his. He's donated to many Democrat fundings. And so, nobody hated him before he decided to run for president.
And he used to be a Democrat.
So no one hated him. He was extremely popular throughout the whole world. And then he decided he was going to run for president. And so it was really the ideals that he stood by that had everything to do with the Trump hatred that was going on here. So this Trump hatred, I think it's great that you are seeing that there's a correlation with the flag, is because while we're attacking Trump as a nation, what's really happening is America is under attack.
Yeah.
And I always said this, as soon as I started seeing that they were going after the Confederate flag, this happened under the Obama administration, I was saying, look, they're not just attacking the Confederate flag. What's happening right now is there's an attack on our history. And the actual history here is under the American flag. Because if you're going to say that the Confederate flag represents slavery, which, by the way, it did not.
Right.
If you're going to say that, then all of that happened. Slavery happened under the American flag. The American flag is next. And what does the American flag represent? It represents our founding ideals. And so this is what's under attack right now. And our founding ideals are wrapped around the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And you're seeing that. That's what's being dragged through the mud. Trump is just representing that.
Gotcha. You said that people, right at the beginning, you said they're not hating Trump so much as what he stands for, his ideals.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, what do you mean by that? What are as you see them, his ideals, what he represents?
Well, first off, I see an originalist constitutional belief, the real ideals of the Constitution. What we're seeing right now is, in particular, the First and the Second and the Fourth Amendments under severe attack right now. Our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion, our freedom of the press, all under attack. Our freedom of the right to own weapons, our freedom of privacy. All of these things are under severe attack right now. These are things that are American ideals that he stands behind. And we're seeing that this isn't what there is a force out there that does not want that to happen, because that gives protection to the people. And what we're seeing is that there is a Goliath out there that I see that wants to steal away these basic foundational liberties. And if that happens, then we are then controlled 100%. The whole idea of free thinking, because freedom of speech really is freedom of thought. The whole idea of free thinking goes out the window. That's what our whole Constitution, our whole country, the whole founding documents has the whole ideal as the individual is superior as far as importance goes. And if you take care of the individual, then society gets taken care of. We've got a difference of the collective versus the individual. The Constitution and what Trump stands for is the actual individual. What we have is a collective mentality that's looking to take over our government right now, and you can see it in the diversity of the platform that we see Biden's supporters standing behind versus what the supporters of the Trump administration stand behind. And I would also say this, that when we look at this past election, when it was like 70 some million people voted for Trump, what I'm seeing is there is a gigantic proportion of people that may not have been voting for Trump per se, but they were voting for these policies, these ideals that wrap themselves around the originalist policies under the Constitution. And we're seeing that coming under superior attack right now.
I got a lot of questions that all go in different directions, and I don't know which way to go. What I was thinking about a few minutes ago as you were speaking to, we always talk about the censorship, the lack of a true voice, freedom of speech, and it led me to, we just did the guest episode with Rex Lee, which was fascinating. It's a high energy episode. You got to be on your toes. If you could listen to it at half speed, it would probably do you good. There's just a lot of very good information in there coming at you very quickly, very important stuff. And Rex was the one that told me about Parler, a social media app that he described as a Twitter or Facebook. Mostly it's a Twitter, but free speech. And I joined it. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what we need. Because as we know, as we talk about a lot, social media is anything but free speech. It's you get shut down by the left continues. So we know about it. I mean, now, what do you call it? Cancel. The cancel culture is a common term now, and that's by the far left. And
I've even seen warnings on our own show on Facebook that this show contains information about COVID.
yes.
For the real story, click here.
Yeah, we can't boost it out. We can't give them money to promote it. They won't take our money to promote it.
That says a lot.
So, but I was so interested in Parler, I joined it, and I got to tell you, I've done so much thinking about this in the last week. First of all, it's not free speech either. It's far right, and it's nothing but far right about it's all every. What do you call it? I don't know. You want to say tweet, but it's a Parler. Every communication is about the election still being up for grabs in 18 different ways that Trump is still going to win this thing. And I wanted to participate in free speech conversations, but I got to tell you honestly, I couldn't say, hey, I just saw this movie, check it out, and here it is. I feel like I would get blasted because it wasn't something far right. It seems so. I started thinking about, so what would be, and will this evolve after the hysteria of the election dies down and all of that? Will this evolve into a true free speech platform where anybody and everybody can actually talk about whatever they want to talk about? And is it possible? And I don't think so. I
think we have to define what free speech is, actually,
Sure.
Because what you just described about Parler doesn't sound like a limitation of free speech. It sounds more like people had different opinions. When I talk about free speech, what I think the founders are talking about isn't necessarily that you have the right to say whatever you want and not be opposed. What I do see you talking about is that here happens to be a place that they're saying is free speech, but mostly conservatives are there. So whatever you say that disagrees with the conservative thought, they're all going to pile on, but they're not going to censor you. They're not going to put a label on your particular site and say, take everything this guy says with a grain of salt because they're lies. That would be a disservice to free speech right there. Free speech is really a place where, and this is what I love about America. It really, let me just back up and say, free speech is the epitome of what this show is about. What we do on this show is that you and I don't agree on everything. There's a lot of things we agree on. There's a lot of things we disagree on. Yeah. Free speech is a place where we can talk about our ideas and then let our viewers decide what the actual truth is.
To them, yeah.
The truth has a ring to it. That's just the bottom line is that this is where the disagreement actually lands, is that there is a contingent of belief out there that the truth can defend itself. And that all we have to do, and our courts of law actually are set up to support that when you provide the evidence, that we should come up with the conclusion that there's one truth. And for the most part, that works. And we've seen that work through our society for hundreds of years now. That works. The truth should not be threatened by a lie. And therefore, because we are adults here in this country, supposedly, under our Declaration of Independence, it says that we are made in God's image, so we're like God, so that the only way that we can be governed is by the consent of the governed. God can't be governed unless he allows somebody to govern, right? We have that type of majesty about us. So we shouldn't have a government that tells us how to think. And so our whole society is based on the fact that we can hear the truth or we can hear a lie, and it's up to us to make that decision. What we're seeing today is we're seeing a press, which, by the way, the First Amendment supports a free press, and not for the benefit of politicians or business, for the benefit of the individual, because the individual doesn't have eyes to see what's happening behind every closed door. In a free society, the press should be there as an advocate for the individual to be able to see what's happening so that we can be educated enough to make our own decision about what the truth actually is. And what we're seeing right now in the press and mainstream media and social media is that they have decided to take the place of God and decide what we should think by eliminating any controversial thoughts as far as they're concerned and only promoting their agenda, saying, you guys aren't grown up enough to make up your own mind. This is too dangerous for you. So we're going to control that. That's how dictatorial governments are formed. And that's what's so concerning about this particular election to me. In fact, I got to tell you, since I heard that Joe Biden won the election last Saturday, I've struggled. I've struggled with this whole thing that's happening in our society where they're clamping down on our freedom of making our own decisions. Bottom line is this: as far as the election is concerned, from my own, I'm a conservative, but I want the person that actually won to win the election.
Sure.
That's important to me. If it's Joe Biden, it's Joe Biden. I'm not going to go and resist Joe Biden if he's the actual winner. But the fact is that we're seeing the press not covering certain stories. We saw it leading up to the election. We saw where they didn't cover that the whole corruption or the alleged corruption that happened in China or the Ukraine. They decided not to cover it. We saw Twitter actually censoring the president's tweets, censoring the president. When have we ever heard of that ever happening? Now that the election has happened, there are a myriad of things that happened during the election process that the mainstream media is just not covering. In fact, what they're saying is, when this comes up, they're saying that these are unsubstantiated and that these are lies, and that when the president talks about this, he's ruining democracy. They're actually using the reason for democracy to defend things that are not part of the democratic process. Very, very confusing, and it's hard to watch. It's like looking at an accident in slow motion.
Man, you're exactly right. It really is. I always say I go on Google News every day and look at the headlines and then decide what I want to delve into a little deeper. Whew, it's been hard to do that. But what I wanted to ask you is, my point was about this Parler. And first of all, I want to clarify, because when Rex told me about it, I was looking up Parler. We typically spell it Parlor, which will lead you to a different social media app that is for kids. It's about video. It's kind of like a TikTok. And so this Parler is Parler. Gotcha. So if you want to look at that. So my point to that was that this is a very far right social media app, which I think is great, because if these other social media apps are being censored by the left, then okay, we have a balance, that there's one for the right, and you can say they balance each other out, and they're in the middle as free speech, but no one ever hears from the middle. All right.
Well, but why is that?
But why is my point?
On Parler, it's because everyone's got a certain opinion. But on every other place that you go to, it's because they're going to censor that out. There's a big difference between the two.
You could go on Facebook and you will find radicals on both the right and the left. They're both there. But what happens is people block or unfollow people that offend them. And so,
which isn't censorship, right?
Yeah, self-censorship. So you form your own bubble. And so Parler, even if Parler evolves into another Facebook, where people from both sides do go on there and start battling it out, it's going to be the same result. And so I'm posing questions for you.
Yeah, I hear you.
How I've believed my whole life that you need the extremes so that you can find, so you could explore all options. And I always believe the truth. And I don't ever believe there's one truth. I believe there's multiple truths to anything, because situations vary so much. But how do you ever find the middle, where I believe that truth more or less lies? if all you hear are from the extremists on social media, and I don't see that changing, because as I said, even if Parler evolves and everybody in the world is on there, you're going to self-censor anyway. I don't know. I don't see how social media ever evolves into. I do believe that this movement is good for combating the mainstream media, which I believe is flailing. We may not realize it, but there's no longer just a CBS and NBC, ABC and CNN. There's now a million different channels out there, and most of them are online, and maybe even something along the lines of us. So I believe that mainstream media is flailing, rightfully so. And what I'm wondering is, how do we take mainstream media out of the equation? How do we find the truth if all we hear are the extremes? And I'm speaking of social media now.
Well, I think you're right. Here's I see it a little bit different than you do, but I think we're on the same path. I believe that businesses like Parler would never have come to be had the social media not started censoring free thought. That's really what created Parler in the first place, and that's why you have so many people of conservative thought. You say far right. I don't like that term, by the way, but that's okay. These guys are more on the conservative thought part of things because they feel like they're being attacked or marginalized on every other social media, so they're over there. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a social media out there that is more right-leaning than anything else. However, I don't see that as I actually see that as a plus for free speech, whereas I see the other side, where you've got Facebook, Google, and Twitter out there, for example. They're representing a limitation of free speech, which is causing other businesses to pop up. That's great because that's capitalism at work right there. I do see where, as long as a place like Parler does not censor, then more and more people may end up getting sick of the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Google, and move over to applications like Parler, and then things start to even out. The danger would be if Parler decided, wait, we don't want any of these opinions coming from liberals or leftists, and we're going to start censoring that, so you can only see these right-leaning opinions. That would be an attack on free speech. So I think what we're seeing is an evolution here. And I think that part is healthy, as long as we don't see the bureaucracy of America coming out and attacking a network like Parler and trying to put them out of business because they're speaking about things that they don't want out in the general public, which I think is a very real possibility and something that can happen, especially under this Biden administration.
Okay. Oh boy, there's so much there. So as things continue to get so divided in social media, and we're talking about how the mainstream social media, that is Twitter or Facebook, is largely censored by the left, and now Parler seems to be self-censoring on the right. Sorry that I use far right. I think there is far right there, and there's just conservatives, probably mostly just conservatives. But to average everyday people, here's what I wonder about how the evolution will unfold and how it needs to unfold for the sake of individual happiness, is because when you're faced with extremes, you're talking about people that their negative emotions are flared. They're fighting. They're fighting for something they believe in, and so justly, but it's not going to contribute to your everyday happiness. Where can we go where we talk about things, where we're adults, where we actually talk to each other like you're in the same room? You're at a party and want to have a good time, and you want to go home with a smile on your face. Will that evolve? Will something evolve into that? Or is it, when we're depersonalized, by being separated by a keyboard and a monitor. Does that bring out, is our real true instinctual nature to be combative and mean?
It's a great question. And I go back to this show again and talk about how, look, I've seen where good friends, I've already had this experience. I talked about it on the last show, where good friends, as soon as we enter into the environment that we've gone through over the last few years, suddenly we can't be friends anymore. And the fact is that that's ridiculous. I think that, and I've been thinking a lot about this actually, that we can get back to being able to be friends and be able to still have conversations about what's going on in the world. But I do think that we need to temper our conversations with respect based out of actual love for one another. And I think that's what's actually cooled off here. There's a famous saying, I'm going to get this messed up, but I'll paraphrase, is that liberty lives in the hearts of people, not in our laws. It lives in the hearts of people. And what we've seen is a cold waxing of the heart here over the last, I'd say, 20 years, where people are just more concerned about themselves than they are their fellow man.
Yeah.
Everything has become a me type of society.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We've got an iPhone, we've got an iPad. It's all about me. It's a me society that we live in. We want to gratify ourselves. And we also want to justify the gratification of ourselves by saying that it's really about other people.
You're right. Virtue signaling. It's all the rage.
See, that's exactly what's happened. So it's become all about me. And when that happens, then we almost become like insects, where we have absolutely no compassion for where the other guy stands, what the other guy feels. You see, on the show, you and I can have these conversations and you can have a difference of opinion, but I care so much about you as a person, far and above anything, any beliefs that you have about politics. I see you as a miracle of God. And if more people could respect each other like that, I think that's what changes. And, our founders really focused on us having a spiritual base and saying that really the educational system is in place. The free educational system here in the United States was developed to teach religion, actually, a spiritual side of our religion, so that people could know who God is. You know who God is, and your concept of God might be different than my concept. I'm a Christian, but really the whole philosophy is, if you know who God is, then you know what love really is. It's not about you. It's about the other guy. It's about self-sacrifice. It's agape love. When you know that, that's where liberty in your heart actually lives. That's what it spawns from. But we've rooted that out of our society, and we've done this over a number of years. And as a result, we as a society have a big void as far as that actual love is concerned, so that when anybody comes against the way that I think, because I'm the God of my life, if anybody comes against that, then I have to just cut them out of my life. And not only that, I have to tell them what kind of person I think they are, so that they know, and they'll never try to disagree with me again. Well, and that's what I see.
That's really interesting. And that it's interesting that this conversation's come full circle, because I started out asking you, is this anti-American sentiment ever going to fade now that the election, if the election cools down, and after that, and we're still on that same subject, bantering about that. And
it's one that can go on and on, right?
Yeah,
I love the conversation.
It could. And so a lot of my question is still, can we fight the good fight, what you believe in, whether it's left or right, and still maintain, which is a very emotional thing. Okay. Yeah, it's rooted in your belief system, and it gets emotional, but So will we evolve to a point with social media and all that where what we really want is at least 75% to get of our day and our attitude and our happiness to be derived from getting along and loving each other, and leaving 25% or less to the battle, fighting our good fight? Can we evolve to that?
I think you say evolve. It's an interesting choice of words right there, because I feel like as far as the so-called evolution goes, and I'm not saying evolution like Darwin evolution, I'm saying as a
Growth.
country, we've evolved to this point. You know what I'm saying? It's like it seemed like we were going in an upward direction, and suddenly we just went downhill really fast. So is there a way for us to get back? I would say this, from my Christian point of view: with God, all things are possible. I really, back to what I was saying, is that I see us in a situation really, and I've been talking about this for some time, where our problems here in this country have everything to do with, as I see it as a Christian, is that with God, all things are possible. I see that we are in a dilemma when it comes to God, and we've rooted God out of every part of our society, and this is a battle between good and evil, dark and light. God versus Satan. There's a spiritual quality to what we're seeing right here, because if you really look at America and what we're based on, I always go back to the Declaration of Independence. The foundation is based on, we're made in God's image. We're like God. And therefore, as a person like God, we have these individual rights that have been bestowed on us that can't be taken away by a government. In fact, the government is only there to protect those rights. That's really all it is, not to create new rights. When we start hearing that kind of thing, that's where we get into trouble. And I see that this whole thing where we are has everything to do with that spiritual battle that's going on. And that's what's introducing hatred. There's people that are guilty on both sides of the aisle,
Mm-hmm.
as far as shutting down the love for your fellow neighbor. I see that. I see people that call themselves Christian totally screwing that up. I see people on the other side totally screwing that up as well. I think this is a time where, like I started out saying, with God, all things are possible. I really believe this is a time for us to pray for the healing of our nation, and pray for the healing of ourselves. Those are the things that need to happen for us to come together and start to understand each other and have forgiveness for one another, so that we can hear each other's feelings and actually hear where they're coming from. And you mentioned emotions before. I say this, it's become very emotional. However, we've got to learn to be very adult about this and put our emotions aside and start thinking very logically about what's happening here, so that we can see what the actual facts are. You said earlier that you see that there's not one truth. I believe in most circumstances that there is one truth. I believe that it is a rarity that there are several truths out there. I believe that the sun is up right now. Nobody could tell me that the sun isn't up. But what we're running into right now is an actual war on what the actual truth is. And we're seeing that playing out on the street, where the news media basically is telling us not to believe our lying eyes.
Okay, boy, you went all over the place on that, because I had a lot of comments I'm going to back up, but it all comes together. You brought it all together, but you covered a lot of ground there. I believe in most of what you say, but with a different fuel behind. What I mean by that is you actually said several minutes ago that you think that the education system should be teaching religion, and I totally disagree with that.
No, what I said was the education system here in America was built to teach that back in the 1650s. That's where the free educational system came from. And you have to remember, the reason people came here to the United States was for religious freedom. They weren't allowed to have Bibles, so they weren't allowed to actually know who God was. Therefore, the government was able to take the place of God and rule over the people like they were slaves, like they belonged to them. So the free educational system started in the late mid 1600s here in order to perpetrate a society where people knew God, so that they would know the value of the individual, and they would know God's love so that they could share it with one another. That's what the whole system was in place for. But that's been taken away. And now, as a result, what we see is a society that's basically godless. And if you stand up for God, you're attacked. And as a result, we're seeing the love of God being squelched in our society, so that people can't even talk to each other if they have different opinions. That hate rules the day. That's what I would say.
I see what you're saying. And to get to what I see as the root of, you just said in your own words that the educational system was to teach the basics of God so that you can see the love and value of an individual. That's where I wanted to get to, is I believe that the educational system, I've said this for decades, the few people that would actually listen to me, but or should listen to me, but I believe that our education system should have personal development classes, starting in elementary school to junior high school to middle school to high school, maybe even college. But with personal development classes, what I see is the teaching of the love of individuals, the individual, how we are interdependent as a society. We're creatures of a social system. We are interdependent. And so if you harm, if you hate, if another person, it's going to reflect back on you internally.
Yes.
You're going to develop a self-hate.
That's exactly right.
And if those principles are taught, I think that we will be guided to a more happy, a happy society, a happier individual, which allows for a happier society, and which also allows for freedom of religion and for worshiping God as you like, as you wish. So that's all left to the individual. I believe everything should come back to teaching individuals how to be better individuals, and we will have a better society. Back to the social media now is exactly where it ties in. I think that it's just my belief that when we teach in groups, and I think religion teaches, okay, as a group, we're going to teach you as a group. I think social media, I got on here, I'm in a group. Politics, I'm a politician. Now I'm part of a group. Now you don't have personal responsibility. It's diffused. And I think that we need to get back to teaching personal responsibility, so that when you have that and you're taught, look, man, if you put hate out there, I'm not going to police you. You're going to police yourself, because if you put hate out there, it's going to come back on you, and you're going to have self-hate. You're going to be unhappy. If you strive towards happiness, and it's a fine line, it's hard to do. You got to fight. Back to what I was saying a little while ago. Can you fight the good fight 20% of the time, but strive for happiness 80% of the time? And it's a balancing act, because when you're fighting, negative emotions come into play. You got to realize that when you're striving for happiness and togetherness, it's kind of you're letting go. You're letting go. You're allowing for other communications to come in that don't agree with your fight.
Well, hold on a second, because I would say this. A lot of what you said I agree with. However, I think that if you're fighting the good fight, as you mentioned, the good fight has everything to do with love, not negative emotions. I think this is where our problem is.
But
is
the
that there's
definition
two
of a
ways
fight,
to fight.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I'm fighting for my family, then it's all based on love. I might even be fighting my own son because I love him. I don't want him to do certain things, and we're fighting but it has everything to do with how much I love him, because I can see that he's going over a cliff that he can't actually see. So I think that as we take a look, and we have to bring this back to America because we're running out of time, but as we're sitting here today, the good fight is, hey, I see America going over a cliff. I see that most people here in America don't even know what's in their Constitution. They don't know what's in the Declaration of Independence. And so they don't know their history. So they don't understand that we've been here, done this before, and that we were on the brink of ruin before, and this is exactly how it happened. Or that they look at world history and you can see other nations that have gone down this place before, but because you don't know it, I'm sitting here in the office of the person that does know, and I'm saying, hey guys, you're going to harm yourself. You're going to harm your families if you keep going this other way. So I would turn that around and say 100% of the time, we should be in this realm of love. And when I talk about the individual, what I'm saying is the individual, not so much myself, but you. I care so much about you that I'm willing to put myself out there in a place where you might not like me, but I'm going to sacrifice that because I love you and I don't want you to hurt yourself. And that's what's going to happen to you. And so I also see this whole thing, speaking of the individual versus the collective, because the collective has everything to do with communist nations, socialist nations. They're about the collective. This country is different. It's about the individual. When you're in the collective, you hear things like, I'd be willing to sacrifice this particular freedom for the good of the collective. You don't hear that where the individual is valued, because what you have under the individual is, I don't even want even one to be lost. The individual is important. Under the collective, we're willing to sacrifice a certain population for the good of the whole population. And we're seeing these things playing out. Back in World War II, in between the battles, what would happen with the USSR is that they would leave their dead out there. They wouldn't even collect them off the field. Even the Nazis would collect their dead off of the field. But this has everything to do with that whole collective versus the individual. They were gone. They were not of value to the state any longer. And so they didn't matter anymore. This is what makes this country different. This is what makes us unique. And this is what gives this country the power that we have. We have to get back to that. We have to get back to the place where we care so much about the individual. We can't lose that, or we'll become like those other countries. And when you look at what happened with those other countries over the last 100 years, you and I have spoken about this, 100 million murders happened as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we better start lightening this up a little bit, Merle.
I did want to talk real quickly about this election before we do that. Sure. I think it's important that we do, because I do want to say one thing. I think it's really interesting how the media called Joe Biden the president on Saturday. And you see all of this conflict that's happened. And you say what you will about President Trump. The fact is that there are anomalies that are out there. There are weird shenanigans that appear to have happened. And whether you're for Biden or for Trump, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to care about the next election. And will this be a fair election? Because our whole democracy is based on, can we have fair elections out there? And right now, I'm concerned that we might not. And if the press doesn't do their job and actually have an unbiased approach to the truth, then we're all sunk. This nation is in big trouble.
Yeah, I agree. I think that everyone is addicted to fighting over who's the president. And every day, all day, I don't mean this just happened in the last month. I mean, it's, again, a social media thing. People have found ways to dig in, found something, their bone to chew on. And it's come, where'd it go? It went straight to the top. President. Okay, so that's where it remains. And I think there is a bigger issue here that you just brought up. it is having fair elections going forward. It amazes me that we're relying on paper ballots in the post office to try to have a fair election. That amazes me in 2020, that it is not based on a driver's license and your vote online. That's it.
How could it not be? I mean, I don't understand. And if you try to say that you need a license to vote, like your driver's license or some kind of legitimate ID, you've got one side of the aisle that's constantly fighting against that. You've got one side of the aisle that's constantly saying, well, we want illegal immigrants to be able to vote as well. We want 17-year-olds to vote. Those are the same people that wanted this massive mail-in voting thing, which adds up to suspicion. Why would one side want that? I'm not giving the Republicans a pass because they didn't do anything to stop it.
Right.
It's why would they do these things? Because now we're in a huge mess, and the potential for violence is tremendous now.
Yes.
How does this get solved? The Constitution's got a way to get this solved. If this thing is contested up to the inauguration, it'll be incumbent on the House to vote on who the president is going to be. I bet you that 99% of the people out there have no idea where this is leading because they don't read the Constitution. And the fact of the matter is, if it comes out where that happens and it changes what the press has been saying all this time, boy, is there going to be shock and awe in our neighborhoods. And that's the scary part about losing the press and the ability of the press to be able to tell us what the truth is, tell us what the rules of the game are, because they're all in the Constitution. And because nobody's been taught what it says in the Constitution, everybody just goes off of their pure emotions. How do I feel about how it should go? That's a dangerous place for us to be in America. And that's also back to your original question. Can we ever get to a place where we can talk to each other? If people can't agree on what the rules are, people aren't educated on what the rules are according to the Constitution, it's a perfect storm for exactly what's happening, and it's never going to end, especially if the press keeps misleading us.
I totally agree. And I just want to kind of emphasize, I think the main points here are simplify everything. Instead of making everything convoluted, what are the rules? Yeah. A driver's license should equal your vote. I mean, a valid driver's license and no felonies equals a vote. I think it should be pretty much that simple. And if there are some exceptions to that rule, I'd like to hear them. I think we should all just consider that. And we should be able to vote online and should be just signed, sealed, and delivered, because we can do our banking online, for God's sakes. So why
not? Exactly. What Larry Elder said it this way: we were able to get 50 million votes for American Idol during a commercial break.
Yeah.
Why does it take this long for us to count up the votes for this election? It's crazy.
No, it's absolutely crazy. So it shouldn't be convoluted at all. One second here. All right. I paused this there for a second. Let's pick back up. So just saying, I think voting should be more valuable, should be seen as valuable. And if you can't go out and get a driver's license, maybe you shouldn't vote.
Yeah, well, you need a driver's license to buy beer or cigarettes, and it doesn't seem like anybody's got a problem getting a driver's license for that. So what's the deal? And we always hear this, it's a voter suppression, and if you believe in that, you're a bigot. See, that's the problem.
There you go.
Suddenly you're a bigot if you disagree with the other people. You're a bigot. You're a misogynist.
My point is devaluing a vote. Devaluing. So anybody, dead people can vote. Illegal immigrants, hey, they have my heart because they're trying to make their lives better and getting out of a horrible situation. Got my heart there. But illegal is the key word there.
Yes.
So it shouldn't equal a vote.
I agree.
So
I agree.
There's the hey. So we got to lighten things up a bit. I wanted to say this morning, right before the podcast, I was looking at Quora, that online thing where people ask questions and the best answers rise to the top.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, hey, what's the best movie that you could recommend that nobody's really heard of? And it was a great answer. somebody said The Man from Earth. And I looked it up. He talked about it, and he said, and I haven't watched it yet, but I queued it up. It's on Amazon Prime. So I think I'm going to watch it this evening.
Interesting.
And, okay, so it's made for a budget of $200,000, and it stars about 6-7 people, all filmed in one room. That's it. And it's about a man who, it kind of comes out, he ends up saying he's like 10,000 years old. And so there's all these scholarly people in this room. So they're representing different intelligent viewpoints that are challenging him on this. He says that he moves from city to city every 10 years so that people won't catch on. And that he's basically immortal. And so that's what the whole movie is about, these people challenging him on this. That's about all I know about it, but I can't wait to watch it for that reason.
I've seen movies before where the person is like immortal, and that's what they have to do. They end up, I know this is a crazy conversation, but they have to move away,
Sure.
like every 10 years because, dude, you're not even aging. What's going on here?
Right.
So they have to, but what happens is they wherever they go, they form these relationships where they really love and adore these people, and then they have to leave. It's so heartbreaking. That would be really hard.
Well, what's interesting about that is if you were 10,000 years old or whatever, and you got to form all these relationships, as you said, I think that you would get so skilled at being a person so in touch with your pureness, your purity, that it would be even harder than you could possibly imagine to actually fall in love with people and then have to move on. I don't know if that makes sense to you. It does to me, though.
And you might even become so cynical about life that like everything that you see and just the human nature and all that kind of stuff, that it might become a curse real quick. And here's a subject that I know is on the agenda for us to talk about, but you never get to retire. You got to work constantly. I mean, it doesn't end. It's just,
you constantly need currency,
and you're constantly having to change jobs too, because you can't work in the same place. And here's the other thing is,
how small
and think how small industry is today too. Like in my industry, it's like we know everyone. You'd have to change industries, and you'd be so paranoid that, oh, I think I see Bill over there. Duck out of here. That would be tough, man.
Yeah,
it'd be tough.
It really would. I'm very interested in the fact that this was filmed all in one room. Did you ever see that movie with Colin Farrell, Phone Booth? That was a great movie.
All in a phone booth, right?
And
that was a great movie.
Yeah. So these kind of things inspired me a few years ago to want to make my own movie with my friends. And I'm surprised that this hasn't been common, because everybody's got a really good camera in their pocket today. And
that's true.
So the whole thought process was based on that. So I created all these characters with my friends in mind. Like, this is Lisa and Dan and his girlfriend Janine, and JT and his wife Allie. Allie was like, no way am I going to be on camera. You're always going to have somebody like that. That's great. Well, she can hold a camera. So I devised these characters, and I wanted to get input on who wanted to be which character. And I had to direct this while being one of the characters as well. That's a challenge. And I also had to put it together. So a couple of people have to be holding the cameras at any given time, or at least one. And while a scene unfolds. And the premise of it was too, that it would always be an evolving soap opera.
That sounds really cool.
So yeah, you need a premise up front, and then the challenge is this is kind of what made me think of it, because this movie I was talking about, The Man from Earth, was all filmed in one room. Boy, does that eliminate a lot of problems. Yeah. Because if you want to make your own movie, you have the problem of your environment. If you want to just shoot in a local, think of Friends in a coffee shop, or Seinfeld in the diner, any of that, well, they have their stages. Well, you don't have a stage if you're filming your own. You have to get permission. Any good story involves some kind of crime. How do you get a cop involved or chase scenes,
right.
and there's a lot of challenges. So I love the idea of being able to minimize the problems, which means you have to increase character development. So anyways, I got everybody on board. Dan and JT were extremely excited about doing this. I developed the characters and I developed the opening scenes, the dialogue and everything. We had our initial, what do you call that when you have the characters sitting around a table going through
whatever that is, the line reading.
Yeah, there's a term for it, I can't remember. So we met at a local bar down here on Lee Road and went through the first reading, and that's as far as it got. All the girls just started talking and we never talked about it again.
Oh, that's too bad.
It is too bad.
It speaks to how hard this must be, actually, to be able to put this together. Yeah. And you're right, there's been some great movies that have taken place in just one room. I was thinking of movie 12 Angry Men with Henry Fonda. It's a jury that's deciding the fate of a person convicted of murder, and it's one of those where you just, I don't bite my nails. I wanted to bite my nails during this. It's just the dramatic shots of each person's face, people like sweating as they're trying to figure out what to do with the fate of this person. And then Rear Window with Jimmy Stewart. That was all right from his apartment. Great movie that was, where he witnesses a murder as he's looking out the window of his apartment, in the apartment across the street from him. So yeah, it's possible. And you think during a time of COVID like this, that, man, people like you and I, this is a great idea, actually. I'm surprised we're not seeing more of this.
I have a great idea that I'm going to talk to you off camera. I'm not going to put it on film. As soon as we get off of here, I'm going to talk to you about it.
We're rich.
But I did come to this summation that, okay, so the more that you confine your environment so that you can control it within that budget, the higher the talent level has to be, the character development. It has to be hyper focused. So you can have an Arnold Schwarzenegger playing this average American hero guy if you can just confuse it all with special effects, great scenery, and all this other stuff. He doesn't have to be a Shakespearean actor. You know what I mean? So the more stuff you have going on, the more forgiveness you can have.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's why I think that we don't see more of this, is because I think at minimum
you need higher talent.
You need to have at least a group of like film students. I mean, people that are really passionate and have a true interest in it. Even acting. I think the best characteristics of a good actor is knowing how to pause, is knowing how to deliver a line with patience.
Yeah. Acting is hard. It's hard. I found out I can only act like me.
It's very true. Well, if you master that, you're doing pretty well. You know?
Yeah, that's all I'm good at.
Any parting words? We're going to wrap this up.
No, they just want to say great show today. Lots of stimulating thought that we've had here, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, can't wait. Hey, everybody, go to over50startingover.com, sign up for our email list. This will get dropped right into your email box. Thanks a lot, and talk to you next week. Love you guys. Love you, Merle.
Love you too.